Hi guys, welcome back. Now, in the previous video, we discussed about the different situations under or different conditions of short-run equilibrium, and we graphed out the different conditions as well regarding abnormal profits being made, economic losses being made, and normal profits being made. Right. By the way, after the video, what I did was I added another diagram to it as well. This diagram basically. So just go and check this out from the uh, updated digital notes file, and it's simply saying this. If you look at this, so basically if this blue shaded region is representing your economic loss, then since the average variable cost is below the at Q1, or for producing Q1 level of output, the average variable cost is below your average revenue. So definitely the firm is making a contribution. So for Q1 units, the average variable cost per unit is this much, while the average revenue price is this much. So price minus average variable cost would give you the contribution per unit, multiply by Q1, the same area of the rectangle, length times breadth, because P minus AVC, this is giving you contribution per unit, multiply by this value. This range is giving the quantity, so length times breadth is the red shaded region. This red area is representing contribution. This is the area of the contribution, right? Okay, now moving forward, guys, in this video, so I just added that. Just go and have a look. I've written everything there as well, by the way, in the digital notes. Anyways, so for this video, what are we going to be doing in this video is that we are going to be graphing out the shutdown for a perfectly competitive firm. Now, in video 27 of the theory of supply, we saw that in the short run, the firm would cease production. It would shut down if the average cost is more than average revenue in the short run. And the firm shut down or will it not shut down if the average cost is more than average revenue? My bad, not all the time the firm shuts down if average cost is more than average revenue. So my question was that will it shut down if the average cost is more than average revenue? The answer to this lies upon whether the average variable cost is being covered or not. So if the average variable cost is being covered, is more than being covered by the average revenue, or just being covered by the average revenue. In other words, whether the total revenue is more than the variable cost, it will not shut down. If it is just equal to the variable cost, it will still not shut down in the short run. Okay, and we saw 2-3 different situations. In fact, we saw 5 different situations. Especially the situation which was relevant for that video was the situation for firm C, D, and E, because these 3 firms were actually making the economic losses. The first 2 firms were making an abnormal and a normal profit respectively. So now what are we doing is that for this video we are graphing that out. Remember in that video 27, I told you in that video we are studying the concept, and then later on what we will do, we are going to graph that concept out in the later videos when we start market structures. Now, again, what are we going to be doing? First, we are taking the example of firm C. The firm C example from video 27 of theory of supply. What was happening in firm C? The firm C, this is actually from video 27. Firm C was actually a theory of supply. Firm C was actually incurring a loss. If you guys remember, you could refer back to your notes. It was currently incurring a loss of $200, and the current loss was 200. And if the firm was shutting down, if it shut down, let's say, then it would have to obviously pay the fixed cost. Then the loss after shutting down would be equal to 500. So since the current loss was less than the loss that would have been incurred after shutting down, the firm decided that it should not shut down. So that's one reason to prove it. It's actually worthwhile to produce, and that's mathematically, in fact, on numbers, it's showing that, okay, fine, the loss after shutting down would be more, which would be equal to fixed cost. But the economics behind that is that there's no reason for the firm to shut down actually, because because of producing, the firm in that case was incurring a contribution of $300, and that $300 was contributing to the payment of fixed costs, and that is why only 200 was being incurred, or the owner would only have to pay 200 from his pocket. So that is why the loss was only 200, right? Because 300 was the contribution towards fixed cost. Otherwise, if the business shuts down, then all the fixed costs would have to be paid by the owner, which would be the loss of the owner, which would obviously mean a bigger loss. But the economics behind it is that the revenue was actually covering the variable cost. And since the revenue was covering the variable cost by $300, so that was the contribution towards your fixed cost. So yeah, having said that, now what I've done it, I've graphed out this. So right now, see, the numbers are irrelevant for us because we are graphing a situation irrespective if the firm is having an economic loss. So what would happen if the firm has an economic loss but it is able to cover its variable cost? That is, a firm is facing an economic loss or a subnormal profit in the short run, but it is making a positive contribution. So it's a loss with a contribution, right? So let's graph out the firm C's position. Okay, so how would firm C look like on a graph? So on a graph, firm C would look like this that I've drawn. So basically, if you see what I have done is first, again, the first step to draw such graphs is that you make the marginal revenue line. That is your average revenue. So see what's happening here. Okay, so first, a lot of students have a difficulty graphing these things out. So देखिए मैं आपको बताता हूँ, I'm just breaking the steps down. First, you have to make marginal revenue, as in the average revenue, which is your price, right? Let me write this way. Price equals to average revenue, which is equals to marginal revenue, right? Because price equals to average revenue, and average revenue always equals to marginal revenue for a perfectly competitive firm. So anyways, since average total cost is above my average revenue, because average cost is above average revenue, that's why I'm incurring economic loss. Then since average variable cost is being covered, so I'll make the average variable cost diagram like this. So look how I have made the average variable cost curve. Right, this is the average variable cost, and now what I'll be drawing. Now you make the marginal cost line. Now you make the marginal cost. First, you draw the average. This is the steps that you have to follow for all these cost diagrams. Make the average revenue first, the price line. Then you make the average. Then you make the cost curves. Then you make the marginal cost. Right, so you cut the, and you know that the marginal cost cuts the minimum of average variable cost and average total cost. Right, so it cuts like this. That's how it goes. So this is your marginal cost. Right, so MC equals to MR at this point, which is your short-run equilibrium point. That is your optimum output. Okay, so this is your quantity Q1. That is your optimum, and at this quantity, this much is your average cost. As in, at this point, this is your average cost, and at this quantity, this is your average variable cost. So यहाँ पे you'll have, and on the y-axis you're plotting. You can write pounds. In some economics textbooks, it's written cost, revenue, profits. But just write pounds because it's the same thing, because on the y-axis is the value axis and we are measuring the value of costs, profits, revenues, everything. Okay. Now let's see what let's come back. So this is the same diagram I was teaching you how to actually draw it. So first draw the marginal revenue, average revenue curve, then the cost curves, then in the last you draw the marginal cost, and you make sure that it cuts the cost curves, especially the total cost and the average variable cost from below. Okay, guys. So let me erase this. Now, coming back, if you have a look at this diagram, what we can see over here is that at Q1 we can see, okay, if my scale of output is Q1, or the profit maximizing output, the equilibrium output is Q1, where MC cuts MR from below, and then MC rises after that. So because that was a rule. So you can see that at Q1, if this is my profit maximizing point, so this much is my average variable total cost, while this is my average revenue and this is my average variable cost. Now, clearly we can see that the firm is incurring loss, and the loss is equivalent to this area. You already know that because we have already seen this in the previous video about how we graph the economic losses. And we've also seen, however, this area is representing your your contribution. This is your loss area, while this below rectangle is your contribution. We've already seen that. I just told you at the start of the video as well, by the way. So, and I have written these things down as well. So first of all, we can clearly see that, so first of all, the firm should not shut down, right? The firm is making an abnormal loss in the short run, but it is making a loss with a contribution. So at Q1, the firm makes an abnormal loss. Yes, it does makes an abnormal loss, which is equivalent. Now, always remember that for such situations, always write numbers. Always write variables. Alphabets लिख दें, variables लिख दें, A, B, C, D, E, F, like this. Don't write values, right? Variables always make it easier and more convenient, more simpler. Makes the diagram look neat as well. So at Q1, the firm makes an abnormal loss, which is equivalent to area ABEP. That is ABEP, this area. This entire box is your normal profit or your economic loss. Subnormal profit, which is an economic loss, right? This area. Why? This we have already seen in the previous video, so there's no point to repeat. And this represents a short-run equilibrium output where MC equals to MR at Q1 from below. From below बोलना ज़रूरी है. MC equals to MR from below बोलना ज़रूरी. Now, एक चीज़ another thing that I want you to see you want you guys to देखें जब आप cost curves वगैरह MCA वगैरह बहुत सारी चीज़ें बनाएं, so there's no point. इसमें आपने देखा होगा मैंने MC को MR से यहीं पे intersect करा. I haven't started the MC curve from here because there's no point. देखें even if you started from here, it's okay. It's not that it's not required. So it's okay. Like I've seen students, some of them starting from here, some of them do not start from here. Right? It's okay. In some of my videos, I have started from here. In some of my videos, you will see I haven't started from this. Because the reason is कि मुझे MC equals to MR का equilibrium यहाँ दिखाना है, where MC is intersecting from below. हाँ, logically आपको पता होना चाहिए कि what MC equals to MR at this point is not profit maximization because MC is cutting MR from above. वो हम पढ़ चुके हैं in the previous videos के, that is not profit maximization. In fact, हमने पढ़ा था this is loss maximization. But अभी क्योंकि हम profits and revenue, I mean, right now, since that is not the objective right now, that we really don't want to show the examiner कि MC is cutting the MR at 2 points. But just say you can if you start from here, it's okay. Okay. So there's an economic loss which is equivalent to A, B, E and P. अच्छा, अब मेरी बात आप यहाँ पे समझें. See, although there is an economic loss which is equivalent to area A, B, E, P, right? But there is a positive contribution as well. So yeah, and we know that at Q1 the average revenue is more than average variable cost because at Q1 the value of average revenue, this is the value of average revenue, this corresponding, this P, whatever this P is, then that is the value of average revenue. And this D is representing the value of average variable cost. So since P is more than D, that is average variable cost is less than average revenue, so definitely there's a positive contribution. So there's a positive contribution to fixed costs on each unit of output that we are producing. And if we multiply the contribution per unit by Q1, since this is representing contribution per unit, and we multiply it by this value, this range, which is representing the quantity actually, because this line is parallel to this line, so the values are the same. So we get an area of contribution which is equivalent to P, E, C, and D, right? P, E, C, and D. That's the resulting contribution area. So we could say that total revenue is more than total variable cost, or price is more than average variable cost, or average revenue is more than average variable cost, the same thing. So see, the firm is better off staying in business and not shutting down. Is case mein what the business should do is it should not shut down, although it's having an economic loss, but it should still not shut down because it's covering its variable costs, right? लेकिन exam में खाली ये लिख के नहीं आना it should not shut down because it is covering its variable costs. I mean, पहले rule mention करें आप कि रूल ये है कि एवरेज रेवेन्यू शुड बी मोर देन एवरेज वेरिएबल कॉस्ट. फिर आप बताएं कि क्वांटिटी Q1 के ऊपर ऐसा हो रहा है, दैट दिस इज एक्चुअली हैपनिंग, द रूल इज एक्चुअली प्रेजेंट देयर. सो यू राइट इट डाउन इन वर्ड्स एंड देन यू ग्राफिकली शो इट एज वेल. दैट्स हाउ यू राइट द आंसर. ओके, सो पहली चीज हम देखें, यहां पे हमने देखा था कि करंट लॉस जो था वीडियो 27 में $200 का था, एंड इफ द फर्म शट्स डाउन द लॉस वुड बी बिगर 500. तो शट डाउन करने पे बिगर लॉस था एज कंपेयर टू ऑपरेट करने पे. नाउ लेट्स ग्राफ इट एज वेल, कि ग्राफ करके ग्राफिकली भी इसको देखते हैं कि क्या बड़ा लॉस होगा अगर हम शट डाउन कर लें. लेट्स सी यू सी. सो फॉर एग्जांपल इफ द फर्म शट्स डाउन, लेट्स से इफ इट शट्स डाउन, अभी लॉस कितना है? अभी लॉस है ए बी ई पी, अभी ये लॉस है. बट लेट्स से इफ द फर्म शट्स डाउन, देन प्रोडक्शन विल बी जीरो. If the production will be zero, there will not be any variable cost incurred. So yes, so variable cost to incur hogi nahi. So no variable cost will be incurred. So if variable cost will not be incurred, then the only cost will be a fixed cost. So when the firm shuts down, what happens is that the loss will actually be equal. The loss will actually be equal to my fixed cost if the firm shuts down, and that would be a bigger loss. Now let's see what's happening here. So guys, if I were to ask you, can you tell me the area of total cost? Total cost is average variable cost, total cost is average total cost times quantity. So at Q1, the value of my average total cost is A. So OA is my average total cost. If I multiply it by the breadth, which is OQ1, that is this multiplied by this value, I get total cost. Because average total cost times quantity will give me per unit cost times Q1, the quantity will give me what? It will give me total cost. So this entire bigger box, basically, this entire bigger box, that is ABOQ1, ABOQ1. This bigger box ABOQ1 is representing total cost. Total cost represent कर रहा है. Okay. Now can you guys take a pause and tell me what is the value of variable cost? Now you see the value of variable cost would be, variable cost is average variable cost, that is variable cost per unit times the quantity that is being produced. So at Q1, the variable cost per unit is this much. This is the value of average variable cost. The value of average variable cost is D. And graphically, this length is representing the average variable cost. But this is the per unit cost. If I multiply it by the number of units OQ1, I get the total variable cost. So total variable cost का जो area आएगा, it will be this area, this box. This box is my total variable cost. This box is my total variable cost. So this blue box is my variable cost, total variable cost. Now listen to this very carefully. I'm using a different color, purple. In fact, let me use red. If the big box, that is A, look at this, AB, Q1O, AB Q1O, you want to, or let's say ABO Q1, whatever, that doesn't matter, right? As long as these variables fit in the box. So AB Q1O is representing the total cost. This area is representing my total cost. While on the other hand, CD OQ1 is representing my variable cost. This is representing my variable cost. So if I deduct the red box from the blue box, I am left with this box, this purple box, that is this area, which is actually my fixed cost. So if I were to ask you, I'm going to repeat it. If I deduct the red box from the blue box, I'm left with this purple region, which would be my fixed cost. ठीक है? So इसका मतलब ये हुआ कि if this box, let me erase this. If this box is my fixed cost, which is my fixed cost actually. If this box is my fixed cost, and if I shut down, then I have to pay the fixed cost. And if I have to pay the fixed cost, then that is the only cost that I will incur, because no variable cost will be incurred. And because I have shut my business down, there would be no revenue incurred. So if the revenue is zero and the total cost is equal to the fixed cost, and I have to pay the fixed cost without earning any revenue, then that area of the fixed cost is also my loss. So after shutting down this entire area of fixed cost, which is my fixed cost, total fixed cost is my loss area. So you can clearly see that after shutting down, my loss area is this purple boundary, which is representing A, B, C, D. So my loss is A, B, C, D after shutting down, while my current loss was how much? How much was my current loss? My current economic loss was this much. This much was my current loss. But after shutting down, what will be my current loss? This entire bigger box would be my current loss. So my current loss right now, so the entire bigger box would be my current loss, which means that my current loss is smaller than my loss after shutting down. My current loss is this box, right, which is smaller than the loss that I would incur if I shut down, which will be equal to this big box. A, B, C, D would be the loss after shutting down. तो यही चीज़ हमने इधर भी वीडियो 27 में देखी थी कि करंट लॉस 200 है और शट डाउन करने के बाद जो लॉस हो रहा है वो 500 है. और 500 दो चीज़ों को रिप्रेजेंट कर रहा है. 500 इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग द लॉस आफ्टर शटिंग डाउन, एंड इट इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग दैट 500 इज द वैल्यू ऑफ द फिक्स कॉस्ट एज वेल, बिकॉज लॉस जो होगा फिक्स कॉस्ट के बराबर होगा. यही चीज़ वीडियो से 27 में देखी थी, और यही चीज़ जो वीडियो 27 में हमने नंबर्स में देखी थी उसको अभी हमने ग्राफ पे भी प्रूफ कर दिया. मेक सेंस? एंड आई हैव रिटन दिस डाउन एज वेल. यही चीज़ मैंने आपकी क्लैरिटी के लिए यहाँ लिख भी दी है कि इफ द फर्म शट्स डाउन, लुक एट दिस, इफ द फर्म शट्स डाउन the loss, if the firm shuts down, the loss would be equal to ABCD, जो अभी हमने बात की थी, which is greater than the loss the firm is incurring while producing, which is equivalent to ABEP. ये bigger loss, ये smaller loss, that is the current loss. So after shutting down, the business incurs a loss which is actually equal to the total fixed cost that I just told you guys. Hence, after shutting down, the loss which would be ABCD after shutting down is actually the total fixed cost as well. So ABCD का जो loss after shutting down है वही fixed cost भी है. क्यों? जैसे कि हमने देखा था कि loss after shutdown 500 है और यही fixed cost भी थी. Clear? तो ग्राफ पे भी हमने देख लिया. There is another way to prove it as well. If look at this, if ABOQ is my total cost, if ABOQ is my total cost, ठीक है? If A, okay, so let me do one thing. Just hang on a second. Look at this. I want you to pay attention, okay? Just a second. My bad. Okay, so let me paste this again. And again I messed up because I don't know what am I doing, but let me try again. Okay, done. Hope this works this time. चले हो गया. अच्छा, so total cost. Look at this. Total cost is ABOQ1. That is ABOQ1. This is Q1. ABOQ1 is my total cost. And total variable cost is CDOQ1. That is CDOQ1, where Q1 intersects the average variable cost over here. And then the same length times breadth, we find out the value of total variable cost, area of total variable cost. Anyways, so again, वही वाली बात कि if I deduct the big box from the small box, I get this. And you know, it's very simple. If I deduct ABOQ minus CDOQ, that is total cost minus total variable cost, I get total fixed cost, that is ABCD. Because OQ cancel, I get ABCD, which is actually my total fixed cost. So see how simple it is. See how simple economics is actually. To be very honest, this is not simple. The entire economics is simple. It's just that you must know how to understand things. And once you start understanding things, it literally gets easier and it gets better every time. Once you start understanding things, it gets better and better. Remember that. It just gets better and better. Okay, guys? Now what we're going to be doing is that we are going to be discussing that there is economic loss with zero contribution. Okay, guys, so here you can see that there is a diagram which is actually representing a situation that the firm in the short run is going through an economic loss. That is, at the short run equilibrium, the firm is incurring an economic loss, but it is not going to shut down. Although still there is no contribution, but still it won't shut down because the total revenue is just covering its variable cost. But anyways, you can see that at the short run equilibrium position, the equilibrium output is Q1. That is, your optimum output is Q1, where MC equals to MR from below. And you can see that at Q1, the average revenue is this. This point is representing average revenue. But the point, now listen to this carefully, the point that represents average revenue on Q1, the point which represents average revenue on Q1 is also the point which represents average variable cost on Q1. The point which represents average revenue on Q1, at Q1, for Q1, is also the point that represents average variable cost for Q1. Because average variable cost जो है वो tangent करके चली गई है average revenue को, right? Because average variable cost just it tangents the average revenue at that point. So anyways, the point is if this means that if at Q1 this is the average revenue, then at Q1 this is also the average variable cost, which means average revenue equals to the average variable cost, which simply means that the revenue derived it simply means that the revenue per unit is equal to the variable cost per unit. ठीक है? Simply means that अगर ऐसा है तो what's going to happen? If average revenue equals to the average variable cost, then if I multiply it by the quantity, then I get total revenue, and if I multiply this by the quantity, I get total variable cost, so they both are equal. So the firm is just covering its variable cost. So in this case, the firm is technically indifferent between shutting down or continuing operations. And this case is the example question. This is actually the same case that we discussed in video 27 from Theory of Supply, that is firm D. If you remember what was happening in firm D, the firm D's total revenue was 1500 and the total cost was 2000, comprising of 500 and 1500 variable and fixed costs respectively. And we assume that the implicit cost is embedded in your total cost as well. So the economic loss, guys, was 500. Economic loss का मतलब यहाँ पे ये नहीं है that the firm is incurring an absolute loss. उसको accounting profit हो रहा होगा, but here we are saying here the loss is in economic terms. ठीक है? So basically what we are saying is that in this example what we can see is that the firm right now is suffering an economic loss of 500. Now the idea is to first see whether it should shut down or not. कि अगर वो shut down करती है तो कितना loss होगा, अभी कितना loss है, अभी loss है 500 का. If it shuts down, still there would be a loss of 500 which would be equal to the fixed cost, because there won't be any revenues and variable cost, but it will have to pay the fixed cost which will equal to the loss as well, because वो अपनी जेब से ही देना होगा. So the loss in both cases is 500. But since the rule is कि whether the shutdown rule हमारा यही कहता है that your price should be either greater than or equal to the average variable cost. अगर ऐसा है, if it is greater than average variable cost or it is equal to the average variable cost, in that case you should not shut down. Price being average revenue, तो एक ही बात है, average revenue being greater than or equal to average variable cost. Okay guys, so इस case में the average revenue at Q1 the average revenue is equal to the average variable cost. Because the point that corresponds to the average variable cost at Q1 is also the point that corresponds to average revenue for Q1. Okay, at that point. Okay, guys. So by the way, the total loss is equal to the area ABCP, because at Q1 the average total cost is this point over here. On the average total cost is respectively telling us on the vertical value axis, that is the value of average total cost. So this represents the value of average total cost. This distance represents average total cost times the quantity that is being produced, length, time, breadth. So this entire area is your total cost. This is basically your total cost. And if you deduct total cost from total revenue, because if this is your OP is your price, while OQ is your quantity, so price times cost, this is your revenue. So if you deduct the entire cost from revenue, you get a loss which is equivalent to ABCP. So ABCP is your economic loss. There's no need to shade it in the exam. You can write it this way as well. ABCP is your economic loss, because students just shade it really, really in an untidy way. Or otherwise, you want to shade it, then you can make these 5 to 6 neat lines. But then just this could equally work as well if you write ABCP equals to economic loss. लेकिन बहुत clearly लिखना है, and write in big letters ABCP equals to economic loss, so that when the examiner glances when the first thing that he sees is, okay fine, the diagram, and then बराबर में लिखा हुआ ABCP equals to economic loss. That is your subnormal profit. ये भी लिख दीजिएगा इसके आगे कि this is subnormal profit. Okay guys, so I'm erasing this, but you write it down. Anyways, so वही चीज़ देखें रिप्रेजेंट हो रही है यहाँ पे भी. एंड द थिंग इज दैट हेयर द फर्म इज indifferent between shutting down and continuing, because in both cases the size of the loss is the same. So but the point is that the firm will continue because it's covering its variable costs. Also remember in video 27 we also discussed that maybe the firms need to satisfy the customers, meet their requirements, and at least it has a name out there, and at times firms would not be willing to shut down because it has so many workers employed. So all of those reasons as well. But economically, don't put this argument in the forefront. The main argument in the forefront should be the argument that I have given, that price should be greater than or equal to average variable cost. And over here, since total revenues are covering the total variable cost, despite it is only just covering the variable cost, that's okay, but still it's covering. Anyways, so guys, ये हो गई हमारी situation where there is economic loss and there is no contribution. You can clearly see that there is no contribution in our example. Why there is no contribution? There is no contribution because contribution is the revenue that you are earning in excess of variable cost. But over here, since average revenue equals to the average variable cost, which means that total revenue equals to total variable cost, so there is no contribution. There is no area of total contribution. Total contribution तब होता है जब average variable cost curve जो होता है average revenue curve के नीचे होता, तब total contribution होता. Let's suppose अगर ऐसी कोई situation होती, if this would have been the average variable cost, let's say, then this area would have represented a total contribution, right? But since this is not the case, so because the point that corresponds to the average variable cost is also the point that corresponds to average revenue. Anyways, guys, so the point what I'm trying to say is that although the firm will continue here, but this is also the case for shutdown. Now what I'm trying to say is over here is that what I have written is इसको आप पढ़ लीजिएगा while studying because it's the same thing that I just said. However, it must be noted that this case represents the shutdown point of the firm as well. Shutdown point क्यों कह रहे हैं? अभी shutdown हो नहीं रहा, लेकिन shutdown situation आ गई है in the sense के ये shutdown situation आ गई in the sense के shutdown situation, not in the sense के it is going to shut down right now, but it will shut down if the price falls further. And this is the shutdown point. This is the minimum acceptable point है ये. Beyond this, beyond of any further fall in price, let's say if price falls further, yeah, any representation where the average variable cost exceeds average revenue will be a situation of complete call for immediate shutdown. इसका मैंने example भी आपको नीचे cover करके दिया है. So for example यही graph मैंने बनाया, the same graph. Now you know that this price, the firm is a price taker. तो ये price कहाँ से हो रही होगी? Industry demand supply से आ रही होगी. Because firms are price takers. So look at, this is the demand, this is the supply. So this is the point where this is the equilibrium price. That is, this is the price, this is the market price, this is the market clearing price that the firms are willing and able, the buyers, all the buyers in the industry are willing and able to pay a price of P, while all the sellers in the industry are willing to produce this much quantity on the quantity axis at a price of P. So, and each individual firm is going to sell at that market price. Each individual firm will sell at a price of P. So each individual firm will face a horizontal price line a horizontal demand curve. So ये discuss कर चुके हैं when we are studying the assumption of perfect competition that the firms are a price taker. So this is your horizontal price line representing it's a price taker, which is your average revenue curve and marginal revenue curve as well. And this is representing the situation where this is your economic loss with zero contribution, because this point is representing that at Q1 the average variable cost is equal to the price, that is average revenue. But let's say if subsequently demand goes down, so the demand curve for the industry shifts to the left. If demand curve for the industry shifts to the left, then the market prices fall. We know the rules of demand and supply, that the market price will go down. So the industry price, the perfectly competitive industry, will face a decline in demand, and subsequently the prices will fall. And if the prices fall, then each individual firm, since it's a price taker, each individual firm will have to sell at the same price. So the average revenue curve will shift downwards, that is the price line will shift downwards, right? It shifts downward, नीचे आ जाएगी, right? And now the new price will be P1. They will sell at the new price. But you can see that, let's say if I remove the old price, so you see now the new price is below the average variable cost, right? Because the average variable cost is above the new price, which means that, whatever the profit maximizing output in this case would be. So for example, if this is the equilibrium output, let's say, because MC is intersecting MR over here. So at this point, let's say, whatever it is, let's say this is QA. So at QA, this is your average revenue, while this is your average variable cost, right? So you see, the firm should not produce. Why would the firm produce an output where the total variable cost exceeds the total revenue? This would be when the average revenue is less than the average variable cost. So why would it do that? So it should not do that. And so in such a situation, when this happens, if the price goes down, the firm should immediately shut down. Okay, guys, now let's discuss with a situation. Now basically we're going to be discussing a situation which is somewhat the same situation like this, where the firm will shut down, right? इसमें तो मैंने price को decrease करके दिखाया, उसमें मैं price को decrease नहीं करूँगा. Technically, more or less, they are the same thing. But यहाँ पे I've showed that the firm was on the verge of shutting down because it was on the shutdown point. A further fall any fall in demand that causes the price to go down will result in immediate shutdown. Okay guys, so here you can see that there's a case where the business is suffering from economic losses in the short run. So at an equilibrium of Q1, the business goes through an economic loss of ABCP. The same logic, we know that at Q1 the average revenue is this point, while the average total cost is this point. And since so this entire region ABOQ1, Q1 is the profit maximizing level, MC equals to MR, where MC cuts MR from below and then MC is rising. This entire ABOQ1 is my total cost. The rules have already been told to you. Why is this the total cost? And total cost minus total revenue. Total revenue minus total cost is your profit, right? So But if this is your total cost and your total revenue box would be this box, that is CPOQ1, this is your revenue. So again, your revenue box is small. So this entire region ABCP is representing an economic loss. Now the point is that there's an economic loss. We need to decide whether we need to shut down or not. Obviously, we will immediately shut down. Why? Because the thing is that, I mean, the thing is that if the firm is producing a quantity of Q1, तो यहाँ पे देखें, I mean, if the firm is producing a quantity of Q1, it is incurring a loss of ABCP. Now, this is the same example or the case from video 27 for me, where the firm's revenue was 1200, fixed cost 500, variable cost 1500, total cost 2000, and the firm was incurring a loss of 800. Remember? So in this case, currently the firm is incurring a loss of 800, and if it shuts down, it would only need to pay the fixed cost, so the loss over there would be 500. So since 800 is more than 500, the firm should shut down, and because after shutdown, the loss would be less. But in the exam, you need to tell that the reason why the firm is shutting down over here is because the firm is not able to cover its variable cost. You can clearly see that the average variable cost curve is up while the average revenue curve is below, right? So लेकिन ये तो for all levels है. अगर हम क्योंकि हमें बात करनी है अपने equilibrium level की, तो हम Q1 पे देखेंगे, right? So at Q1, which is MC equals to MR, which is the optimum output, which is the equilibrium output in the short run, at Q1 we can see that the average variable cost is this point. This is representing average variable cost, right? So if this is representing average variable cost, so if I extend this line over here, so basically if this is representing average variable cost, this point, let's say point D, and point E is representing the value. So basically OE is my variable cost per unit, while OQ1 is the number of units. So average variable cost times quantity would give me total variable cost. So the area of total variable cost would be EDOQ1. How much? EDOQ1. EDOQ1. EDOQ1 is my total variable cost area. If I'm producing Q1 units, then this is the total variable cost that I'm incurring. So if I'm incurring a total variable cost of this much, that is EDOQ1, and my revenue is, and what is my revenue? This is my revenue. So this is my revenue. So if this is my revenue, while this is my cost, my revenue box is smaller than my total variable cost box, right? Which means that my revenues are not able to fully pay off my variable cost, which means that I'm making a negative contribution, which can also be proven from this numerical example done in video 27, that the variable cost was 1500 while the revenues were 1200. इसका मतलब है कि 1500 की वेरिएबल कॉस्ट पे करने के लिए जो रेवेन्यू, देखें वेरिएबल कॉस्ट तो रेवेन्यू से पे होगी, ओनर तो अपनी जेब से नहीं देगा, बट लेकिन क्योंकि वेरिएबल कॉस्ट रेवेन्यू उतना नहीं हुआ तो फिर ओनर को अपनी जेब से पैसे देने पड़ेंगे, वही तो लॉस है ओनर का, पार्ट ऑफ द लॉस बेसिकली, रिमेनिंग पार्ट इज द फिक्स कॉस्ट. तो रेवेन्यू ने वेरिएबल कॉस्ट को कवर नहीं किया तो फिक्स कॉस्ट को क्या करेंगे, वो तो फिक्स कॉस्ट भी द ओनर हैज़ टू पे फ्रॉम हिज पॉकेट. सो वही है ना कि इस केस में द फर्म विल इज नाइदर एबल टू फुली पे द वर्कर्स, नाइदर इट इज एबल टू फुली पे द रॉ मटेरियल कॉस्ट. नेगेटिव 300 इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग अ नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन. नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन का मतलब बेसिकली ये है, इज नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग दैट पार्ट ऑफ द वेरिएबल कॉस्ट दैट द रेवेन्यू इज नॉट एबल टू कवर. Any owner has to pay from his own pocket, right? So there's no point doing such a business. I mean, you're not able to pay your raw material supplies, neither you're able to pay your workers, and you're already incurring a heavy loss. Economic losses हो रहे हैं आपको. So the workers won't be working free of charge. The owner in this case would have to pay from his own pocket, right? So avoid such a bad reputation, to avoid the credit worthiness, to avoid the bad reputation, the business should shut down. I mean, ये तो elaborative points आप लिख सकते हैं, but economic rule आपको पता होना चाहिए. So the firm must shut down, right? Because at Q1 the average variable cost is more than the average revenue. ये लिख कर आएंगे, which obviously means that total revenue is more than total variable cost. Sorry, उल्टा बोल दिया, total variable cost is more than total revenue. And then फिर आप इसको इसके variables के through, areas के through show कर सकते हैं. कुछ चीज़ें मैंने लिखी हैं. सो अगेन शटिंग डाउन वुड रिजल्ट इन अ लॉस ऑफ 500 विच वुड ओनली बी फिक्स कॉस्ट वाइल द करंट लॉस इज 800. शटिंग डाउन इज बेटर. ओके, सो कुछ चीज़ें देख लें. सो टोटल कॉस्ट इज इक्वल टू ABOQ1. ABOQ1 इज रिप्रेजेंटिंग माई टोटल कॉस्ट. Already explained to you why. Variable cost is EDOQ. EDOQ is my variable cost. So if I deduct the total cost from my variable cost, I would get the fixed cost. So the fixed cost is what? The fixed cost is ABED. So technically this is representing, ABED is representing my fixed cost. Okay guys, ABED is my fixed cost. Now listen to this very, very carefully. मुझे टोटल इकोनॉमिक लॉस कितना हो रहा है? मुझे टोटल इकोनॉमिक लॉस हो रहा है ABCP. द टोटल इकोनॉमिक लॉस इज ABCP. ABCP इज द टोटल इकोनॉमिक लॉस. नंबर्स में देखें, सो इकोनॉमिक लॉस इन दिस केस इज 800. 800 is the economic loss. ठीक है. Again, this is the economic loss, not loss in absolute terms. It's assumed that the implicit cost is embedded. And वैसे भी we already studied that in the average cost curves and the cost curves, the implicit cost is embedded. Okay. So 800 is divided between the loss of 800 is the representing the amount that the owner has to pay from his own pocket. वो अपनी जेब से 500 की फिक्स कॉस्ट भरेगा बिकॉज रेवेन्यूज इतने हुए नहीं है. एंड प्लस वो 300 की वेरिएबल कॉस्ट भी अपनी जेब से भरेगा. तो 800 जो है वो उसका लॉस है, ये इसको अपनी जेब से देना है. लॉस का मतलब होता है वो पैसे जो जेब से देने हैं. ठीक है. सो टोटल इकोनॉमिक लॉस कितना हो रहा है? ABCP हो रहा है. और न्यूमेरिकल वैल्यू क्या है? 800 जो डिवाइडेड है बिटवीन द अमाउंट फिक्स कॉस्ट जो में फिक्स कॉस्ट पे करेंगे प्लस नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन. दैट इज अमाउंट ऑफ वेरिएबल कॉस्ट नॉट कवर्ड बाय द रेवेन्यू. अब सुने और से, जैसे कि 800 डिवाइडेड है बिटवीन फिक्स कॉस्ट एंड नेगेटिव कॉन्ट्रीब्यूशन, वैसे ही हम कह रहे हैं कि जो इकोनॉमिक लॉस है ABCP, क्योंकि इकोनॉमिक लॉस ABCP इज एक्चुअली न्यूमेरिकली इट्स 800. ठीक है. मतलब समझाने के लिए बता रहा हूँ आपको. यहाँ पे एग्जाम में ये नंबर्स देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है आपको. ठीक है. ABCP इज द इकोनॉमिक लॉस. नाउ ABCP बेसिकली एक्सप्लेनेशन में आप लिख सकते हैं. आई मीन एक्सप्लेनेशन में अगर आपको एक आध वैल्यूज़ देकर समझाना है आप समझा सकते हैं. दैट्स योर कॉल. ठीक है. डिपेंडिंग अपॉन हाउ मच टाइम यू हैव. बट एज अ स्टूडेंट यू मस्ट नो ABCP is your economic loss. Now this loss, मैंने यहाँ लिखा हुआ है, this loss is divided between, it comprises of the fixed cost that the owner has to pay from his own pocket plus the variable cost that is unpaid from revenue, because which is the negative contribution. अगर हम न्यूमेरिकल एग्जाम्पल की बात करें तो ये वैल्यू क्या है? ये वैल्यू 500 है, ये वैल्यू 300 के बराबर है. ठीक है. और ये टोटल लॉस 800 है. न्यूमेरिकल अगर हम को ले आए इसमें इन्वॉल्व करें तो. एनीवेज, so total economic loss ABCP is equals to the fixed cost plus the variable cost unpaid from revenue. Fixed cost की वैल्यू हम निकाल चुके हैं ABED, हमने लिख दी ABED. And what is the negative contribution? The negative contribution represents the loss the owner has to bear in terms of the revenue not being able to cover the variable cost. Sorry, the revenue not being able to fully cover the variable cost. And that is actually equivalent to this area, EPCD. Why? Because I've just told you that this is my total variable cost ka box, right? And this is my revenue ka box, which means that this is my negative contribution. सही है. So negative contribution कितना है? Negative contribution है ये आपका ECDNP. Now listen to this. Fixed cost कितनी है? Fixed cost is ABED. Look at this. ABED is my fixed cost. This is my fixed cost. Okay, this is my fixed cost. Fine, very good. Now what is my variable cost unpaid from revenue? That is negative contribution. EDCP, EDCP, EDCP कितना है? EDCP. So technically what I have done is ABCD plus EDCP. Okay, again ABED plus EDCP. That is fixed cost the owner has to pay plus the variable cost unpaid, that is negative contribution. ये किसके बराबर है? ये टोटल लॉस के बराबर है जो 800 हमारा न्यूमेरिकल में था और which is actually equal to ABCP. और हम बन तो रहे exactly it is equal to ABCP. It is equal to the total economic loss. देख लें आप. What is total economic loss? अगर मैं इन दोनों बॉक्सेस को ऐड करूं तो ये किसके बराबर बन रहे हैं? ये पूरी these are the parameters, that is ABCP. बन गया लॉस, इकोनॉमिक लॉस. So see how things are connected. देखें, पर्पज टू टेल यू इसकी रीजनिंग क्या थी. एक तो इट विल हेल्प यू इन MCQ. सेकेंडली आपको ग्राफ समझ में आएगा यार. आई मीन यू विल अंडरस्टैंड व्हाई व्हाट्स हैपनिंग. यू विल नॉट बी स्केयर्ड फ्रॉम द ग्राफ्स एनी मोर नाउ. दैट आई एटलीस्ट प्रॉमिस. आई एम ट्राइंग माई बेस्ट दैट द फियर ऑफ द ग्राफ्स comes out of you. That is one of my objectives because graphs bother the students. But like I said, the more you understand it, the better it gets. Okay? And this is simple. So now inside out, you know the graph. Inside out, you know the graph. Okay, guys? So this is representing a situation of economic loss where the firm will shut down because it is not covering its variable cost. And shutting down is beneficial for the firm because the loss after shutting down would be less than the current loss that the firm is going through, right? So the firm should cease production and it should shut down, right? So yeah, we had already discussed this in video 27 of Theory of Supply as well, and now we have already seen its graphs as well. So I hope you understood this video and enjoyed it, and I'll see you all now in the next video. Allah Hafiz.